What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Business Freedom Podcast. Y'all are in for a treat. Adam Dow in Wolfboro, I think we decided was how you say it. New Hampshire is with us, and I think you run it's the number one team in the state, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so you've been at it for, I think, 16 years, and you built a team sort of starting 6 years ago. And so before I kind of get into the question and for you to kind of hook us in here, are you prepared to share the good, the bad, the ugly about your business growth journey?
Absolutely.
Awesome. And I think that's what's lacking in our industry. And I love to hear about the struggles that people have had and how they work through them. Why don't you just kind of kick us off here with like the quick intro? You know, got into the business, did it as a solo agent for this year, started a team 6 years ago, and, you know, give them the hook of what you'll do this year so they actually stick around and listen to the whole podcast.
All right. Well, what we did last year was 132 transactions for 74 million. So we are running a pretty good operation up here, but I did start 16 years ago. It was during a time in the economy when there was not a lot of jobs out there. So I had worked for a consulting company. We did managerial consulting, and I could see the writing on the wall. We were trying to do a venture capital type situation, and the venture capital company called us and said, "Hey, we're out of money. We're not going to do that deal we said we were going to." So I was on monster.com, kind of just cruising around, applying for jobs that I thought I was qualified for, and not really getting any feedback. And I stopped into Coldwell Banker. I saw their ad on monster.com, and he's like, "You're hired." And I'm like, "Oh, great! I didn't realize at the time that they hired everybody." And so I went and got my license, got into real estate. And my wife wasn't too psyched to hear that it was a purely commission-based job. The company I left owed me quite a bit of money, so I didn't have a lot to start out with either. But it's, obviously it's worked out. There's been a lot of bumps in the road along the way that we can talk about if you bring them out of me. And but so I went from being a single agent, heavily invested, probably 2005, 2006 online. I knew what cost per click was from my old job. I knew how to do Google AdWords and those sorts of things. So I built a website before a lot of the other companies in my town, and certainly a lot of the different agents didn't have single agent websites. So that was kind of the first step in my growth. And then I joined Keller Williams 6 years ago. So that's when I started a team. And that was the second kind of revolution in my business, where I just changed the way I was doing things for the better. And we've been working on that ever since.
Awesome. And what do you got going on personally? Family or anything like that?
Yes. My wife and I have 3 kids. We've got a boy in the middle of 2 girls, so 8, 13, and 15. And we are a skiing family. We have a condo about an hour and a half north of here that we go skiing every weekend. So they're at good ages. They all can. I just saw a memory on Facebook. My daughter, we had her on skis when she was 23 months. So this is actually her 7th year skiing. And my son is now doing pretty crazy tricks on skis. And so it's a good time in the family life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's start off with, growing a business is certainly not as glamorous as some people might think. To get the motivational ball rolling, is there any kind of like success quote that you've sort of hung on to over the years, or any sort of like, something you go back to or that's on a wall somewhere that means something to you?
I think there's a concept that I really cling on to is, if I was making a pretty good living as a single agent, and there has to be a reason to do a team. And my reason is, we live in a great town. It's a second hometown. There's a lot of $1 million properties here, but there's not a lot of opportunities for jobs for people. Especially, I grew up here. I've got 9 generations in my town, so it's kind of crazy that I never thought I'd stick in this town. I always thought I'd go to Boston, make it big, then off to the races. But for me, I heard at a Keller Williams training, my world is a circle. And if I don't have my circle big enough, then other people can't fit into it. So I had to readjust my thinking on my vision, how big my business was going to be, so that I can invite not only people into it, but people with big visions themselves. So I could have this group or team or whatever you want to call it, that there's a lot of successful people in it. So I have to push myself to make sure that my world is big enough for other people to fit in.
Yeah, that's really, really good. So let's dig into when you started growing the team. So there's these different phases of growth. Did you have an assistant before you started the team?
When I came from my old company, I came in with a couple agents, and then one person that came in with me. We joined together as a team. We kind of looked at our production, set up, all right, this is how much you did, so you get this amount of the business, and then the other percentage went to this other person that came in with me, and she's still with me. She's a huge part of the. She's more of the detail person, and I'm more of the visionary tech person. And so what was the question again?
I'm trying to, so I want to break down your phases of growth. And I was
Okay.
just wondering, like, when you made the shift
Assistant.
from like solo agent to adding another person.
All right.
Like,
So
and then I even want to get into like the daily schedule and how you offload tasks. And,
sure.
we talked about before I hit record, 85% of the industry doesn't have an hourly assistant,
Absolutely.
so it's this huge barrier to growth if you're going to do all your $12 tasks yourself.
Right. Well, if you don't have one, you are one.
For sure.
So, so I joined with Sharon. We teamed together. We kind of laid out kind of a plan for going forward, and then I just started taking classes on what is a team, what does it look like to have a team, and there was the challenge put before me. Everyone said that, just like you said, you have to have an assistant because you're doing tasks that aren't money-making activities. In order to get more in front of people and do more money-making activities, you have to have someone to do the stuff from an assistant basis. So we did hire an assistant, but in doing so, you have to really figure out, how do I operate my business? What are the things that I do when I take a listing? What's my listing checklist look like? I often say, when I was a single agent, I was very creative. I had a lot of good ideas. I like marketing. I like technology. So I'd have all these things that I would do, but there was no process around it. I'd do something cool for one listing, and then I wouldn't do it for somebody else. And then they'd say, why'd you do that for him and you didn't do it for us? And so there was no process in place. So when an assistant does it, it forces you to figure out, all right, how do I operate my business? What are my checklists? Because I got to hand those responsibilities off to somebody. And if I don't know what I'm doing, I can't hand them off to anybody.
Yeah, and there's gold in there. I don't recommend reading this book, but it's a book called Checklist Manifesto, and it basically goes through like the reason planes don't fall out of the sky or more
Right.
people don't die in a hospital is that there's literally paper checklists. So
Yes.
people try to overthink their real estate business. No, just make a paper checklist. Like if you don't want to be the one preparing your listing packets, just open up a Word document and say, these are the 10 things that have to be in them, and sit down with a lower level admin.
I was actually I was teaching a class doing for newer agents. I was going through my listing presentation and talking about how I present and what I present to the agents to try and help them out. And one of the things I was saying is, if you have to figure out what your business is going to look like. There are a lot of different ways of selling real estate. There's a lot of different things that you can do for your listings. And if you're not a tech person, don't promote that you're a tech person. If you're going to do a bunch of open houses, tell them you're going to do a bunch of open houses, but figure out what you're going to do, make a checklist out of it, and then you can focus on it, improve it, but you just need to get your base core thing down and do things that you want to do. If you like to meet people, do the open house. If you like to be on social media, have a checklist that's heavy in Facebook, or different things like that. You really just need to figure out who you are in real estate, and then when you're at the listing presentation, you can say you're an expert in those things. One, you enjoy them, and two, that's what you do.
And so let's talk about this shit, like your daily schedule when you had the administrative support. Are you typically time blocking, new business development in the morning? Like, what's the daily schedule to get busy enough, even before you hire an assistant? It sounds obvious, but most
Right.
agents don't treat their business like a business. What does your daily schedule look like back then?
Back then, it was listing appointments. It was actually, really cool. The first time I got the call, hey, Adam, can you come do your listing presentation? And all I had to do was go over to the shelf where we had 3 or 4 listing presentations all put together. All I had to do was pull them out and go off to the listing presentation. So being in a second home market, there's a lot of cyclical aspects to our business. So that first winter, we focused a lot on what was our process. And then when we were busy in the summertime, the processes took over, and I knew I had the listing presentations ready. I knew if I took a listing, we knew what we were going to do. She was going to get the tax card. She was going to get the deed. She was, print off, those things and put them in a packet. So right now we've got a thing where, I have a binder basically, with all of the information. I have one of these for every one of my listings, and I know they're all on the shelf over there. If I grab any one of them, I know what's in it. And we have the same thing in Dropbox. So they know, all right, a listing package has to be put in Dropbox. So it just makes it, because you get towards the end, you get into a closing, and you say, oh, I never printed out that deed, or I never got this signed. So it actually makes you a better realtor if you've got the process and then the person helping you doing the things that you can expect to happen on an everyday basis.
Yeah, and this sounds so remedial, and I promise you business is no more complicated than this.
No.
When you're doing the thing that is, when I got into the business, I made a commitment that I wanted to make $250 an hour. I left a pretty good corporate job, and I wanted to work 2,000 hours. Before I paid the government, I wanted to make $500,000. And that made it real easy for me to build a system and backfill a body in it, build a system like everything administrative and marketing, built a system and backfilled it. Everything buyer related, built a system and hired buyer's agents. So I didn't have to work evenings and weekends.
Right.
Same thing on the listing side. So it's been a constant evolution of that. So that's really good. Talk about the next phase of growth for you. Like maybe, I don't know if you ever gave up buyers or in your mind, what's the second step of growth for you?
Well, we have we don't have a lot of, we don't have really any lockbox agents. So we do a lot of assisted showings. And the challenge there is if you get 50 listings, or if you have 2 listings on top of each other, even if you have 5 listings, they always seem to want to see it at the same time. So with assisted showings, it was tough. So the way I structured the team was, I was the person that was the listing agent, and the head of the team, CEO or whatever, but I created a position which is essentially a listing agent, but instead called it a property expert. So what I could do is commit to our sellers that this is the Dow Realty Group, this is my role, and here's Sharon or Margot, I have 2 now. They're going to be the property expert on your property. They're going to make sure that the brochure is absolutely accurate. They're going to make sure that when a showing happens, the buyers will know all of the good features about your home. This is a 50-year roof, not a 30-year roof, things like that. And then they'll make sure that we have all the contracts in place. That way we have 2 people that are available to show versus just one person. And at first people would say, well, Adam doesn't do this or Adam doesn't do that, kind of poking fun of the team. And, a lot of those agents say that they do everything, but ultimately they don't. Like, we'll go to a home inspection and our team will be there, but that agent say, hey, can you cover that? I've got a showing. Or, you do showings without them, even though they're saying that they do all of this stuff. It's tough to do real estate if you get more than one listing all by yourself. So people may make fun of the team, but having specific roles that you do every time for every one of your clients, it's just a better way of doing the job, I think.
Yeah. And when you look forward in the future, I mean, the only thing that's going to keep us in business at a high level is our ability to provide a service that is actually differentiated from another agent.
Right.
Like consumers are not going to be stupid forever and just throw money at a transaction.
Right.
If you're not earning on a 500, if you're not earning in the neighborhood of $30,000, or half of it, $15,000 for helping a buyer, that's going away.
Yeah.
It's going to be under pressure for sure. Any thoughts on that, on the buyer or seller side of your business that you're sort of thinking through as you grow the team?
Yeah, certainly. Because, and this is what I was talking about on Monday with the newer agents, I compete on listings. I don't go in there and say, I'm going to do this print ad or I'm going to do this marketing piece. I compete on my business model. I actually talk about, this is so-and-so, this is my virtual assistant, this is what they're going to do for you, this is your property expert, this is what they're going to do for you, these are my buyer agents, and these are what they're doing to bring buyers to your home. in talking about the team structure. And we spend money on things to support that. We spend money on staging. We spend money on professional photography. So there's a lot that goes, and I try to, just like you said, if there's agents out there that are just plunking into MLS and not providing value, they're just hoping that it will sell and they'll get a check. As we head into a shift, I'm excited because we're doing the things that will earn us the business, not just, it's not just putting it in MLS. We want to make sure that before a house gets photographed, it's in the best possible shape it can be. So the pictures, when they go online, are spectacular.
Yeah. That's really good. So the takeaway for me is, make sure if you want to scale your business and be in business and charge a premium, get paid a premium for what you do, it's all systems. It's deciding that we're going to be the Disney of real estate versus the crappy, city county fair that comes in once a year. It's just kind of deciding what you're going to be. Let's transition. I want to talk about something that I honestly feel like our industry, maybe it's just every industry, or maybe it's just human nature where we don't share our failures.
Sure.
Some of the points where, maybe it just felt like a lot, or you wanted to give up, or it was, you have an 8, would you say 8, 13, and 17? What were the ages of your children?
8, 13, 15. Yep.
8, 13, 15. So 6 years ago, they were 2, 7, and 9.
Yeah.
That's a crazy. I have a 8 and 11-year-old, so I know. So talk about some of the times where it just felt like a lot, where you felt like giving up, or there was just a failure point, and what you learned from it.
Sure. One of the things that's hard for me is the systems. So I'm talking up here, I'm very detailed. I've got all these, I need the checklist to be functional during the day. I'm not a checklist person. I'm not the person that would naturally gravitate towards this. So it was pain at the beginning, committing to a system, committing to a checklist. And a lot of the reason that I was successful as a single agent is I had a big network of people. I played golf with the right, the lawyer in town, the accountant in town. So I had the right relationships, have a lot of integrity, honesty, you don't get referrals unless you're a good person, most of the time. So I was naturally successful at real estate to a certain level. So when I transitioned to the team, started making my world big enough for other people to fit in, I couldn't teach somebody to be friends with the right people. There had to be some sort of system in place. So I actually had a pretty bad failure of somebody who wanted to join my team, wanted to sell the luxury stuff in another town. I'm like, great, yeah, I can teach you how to do luxury, but I couldn't. At the time, I didn't know what systems needed to be in place to be a luxury agent. I didn't know how to break into the right relationships to be in luxury. So that I didn't provide enough value for that person, and they left the team. So all of these things are learning experiences, and so right now we're doing a big push on, because one of the things that we haven't done well is really solidified our allied resources, our preferred professionals. I have buddies that are builders. I've got friends that are in the trades and things like that, and those are who I recommend. But now I've got an application right here for our preferred professionals. But we're putting a system around that now. So it's always taking what I was naturally good at that just happened and getting it into the team atmosphere and teaching others how to do it. So when I have people coming to the team, I can say, all right, these are the activities that you have to do to grow a real estate business in our operation, in our world.
And so I think one thing, if maybe you can touch on it a little bit, one thing that I think when it comes to making the transition from solo agent, not only is it a mindset shift, but a lot of folks have never built a business. They've never managed expenses. They've never managed people. How confident were you in those things before you started, or did you really just have this commitment to make your world big enough to inspire others to be a part of it? Was there fear, and how'd you get around being now responsible for other children in your business to a certain extent?
Well, there's still fear in that. I mean, we've got 13 real estate agents working for us now, and some are more successful than others. So I'm always, why is this person not as successful as this person? What am I doing as a leader that I'm failing them and not getting them up and running as fast as that I should be? So I'm not as a person that loves accountability, and I don't think anybody does. If you ask them, hey, do you like to be asked if you've met your goals? Do you like to set goals and things like that? So myself, it's hard for me to do that with my team. So we've just set up a Friday call. Every one of my team members and I are going to do 15 to 30 minutes. And that's something that is a struggle for me to do, but I know I have to do it. So I think that's always a challenge for me is doing the right business practices, leadership practices to keep the team going and keep them engaged and wanting to be on the team.
Yeah, I mean, we see that a lot. It's anyone that's been to a Super Bowl that had a coach that had a big hand in getting them there, they're not going to remember, the extra like workouts or like the accountability as much as they were, they won the Super Bowl. They're wearing a Super Bowl ring, and I liken it to that. Accountability is like, you either want to like succeed in life or you don't, and I'm going to help you succeed. And it's not always going to be easy.
Well, and one thing, I've had a couple coaches along the way, and I remember one of my coaches talking about how hard it was for him to get me to do some things. And then I turn around and expect, if I have a team member that's not doing something, well, why aren't they doing it? I asked them to do it. Why aren't they doing it on the first try? Or why isn't this new initiative just taking off? Because it's a great idea. And then I say, all right, well, he told me that I should set some goals, and it took me 6 months to get that going. Why should I expect anything different from people on my team?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the thing, like, if you're disorganized, your business is disorganized. Like,
Right.
if you're rolling in at 10 a.m. and you have no discipline around like new business development, your team surely isn't going to get there at 8 o'clock and light up the scoreboard for you.
Right.
That's interesting. What
But
talk about any points in the journey where like it was that transition point or the mindset shift or the light bulb that went off, like, I've got to go this direction or I've got to do it a different way?
Probably 6 years ago when I made the move over to Keller Williams and learned about teams and what teams can do for you and for your business. Because I was number 9 in the state 6 years ago. Did 26 sales, 23 million. So you can see I was on the higher price point. But in doing that, there was a lot of cash flow ups and downs. I had big peaks and long valleys. I'd sell 2 nice houses and then not have a closing for a couple weeks. And I thought that was going to be the norm for me. Like, I'd be making a good living. I'd be working my tail off. I wouldn't have a lot of free time. We have the pictures of me on vacation with my feet in the pool, but my hand, being on the phone. And I just thought that was going to be life. But when I transitioned to thinking about what a team is, and what that could do for me. Sorry, somebody's trying to call me. And realizing that I didn't have to do everything. I didn't have to put in the signs. I didn't have to write the contracts, even beyond, because I didn't really have the assistant nailed down until 6 years ago. So the thing for me was I was transitioning from being a real estate agent with a job to running a real estate team that was a business. As the team grows, I'm able to say, all right, here's the different aspects of my business. This is going well. This is not going well. But not everything, it's not all dependent on me. Like, I have other people that are making me money. So I can go skiing with my family on the weekends. But there has to be that decision to say, all right, am I going to make every dollar that I'm going to earn, or am I going to help other people make money and make money along the way?
Yeah. And this is sort of the thing that I think is most broken about the industry, and not only from a consumer standpoint and, just getting the best buyer and seller services they can, but, if you can't take a breather from your business, like, you don't have a business. most real estate agents that are successful, traditional success is that you have a good job, a really good job. Like you're probably making double what you could in a corporate job,
Right.
and that's good. It probably means 7 days a week you're involved in your business somehow. Most evenings you're on email and text, and so it's the biggest thing that we fight for in real estate B school is set it up like a business. You could scale it quicker when you're not in everything. I mean, we've seen it over and over. Um,
I
let's
was
kind
I
of
was actually talking to somebody. I remember being in a meeting with them probably 3 years ago, and we're doing a mastermind with a bunch of realtors in a room, talking about our teams. And I remember them saying, "Well, we don't have a buyer's agent because we can make more money if we sell the stuff on our own." And it kind of stuck with me. It was a mindset thing where they were looking at the short term versus what it could turn into. And that same agent called me just last week saying, "Hey, my business hasn't really grown like a lot of you guys in the company. Just calling a couple of different agents to get some ideas on how we could grow our business." So, and I remembered that conversation that we had that couple of years ago, and I think it was that thinking. It was, all right, well, if I work with that buyer, I can make more money. But if you had three buyers agents working with three buyers, you just don't have the time in the day to make all the money that you could with the three buyers agents. But you have to start with the first one. So you have to take a little bit of a step back, maybe a hit and pay, to go out and grow to where now you're making more money and having more time off.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, people in our industry, and probably every small business owner or practitioner, they measure their growth only by one dimension. Like, did I sell more homes this year than last year? Did I
Right.
do more GCI? Not did I have more time? Did I have less stress? Was I able to be present with my family? Is my physical health better? So let's dig into the current business a little bit. You kind of went through the team structure a little bit, but what about lead sources? How are you guys set up? What are the most profitable lead sources? Maybe some lead sources that you tried and failed miserably at. Kind of get us into the current business a little bit.
So one of the things that we're really doing, I try to do something every winter, whether it's redesign of a website, a certification, or something. And this winter, we've really dove into our CRM. We've got thousands of people in our databases, but we're not as intentional about contacting them on a regular basis. So I've challenged our agents to get 100 people that's their sphere of influence that they're going to call once a quarter, and also get at least 30 people in their preferred professional profile. So there's 130 people that if they called once a quarter, they'll have a successful real estate business, because most of our business does come from referrals. I've been up to $4,000 a month on Zillow, and we're cut down a little bit. And I'm this winter trying different lead sources, whether it's some Facebook services or using Brivity, which is a company Ben Kinney owns. So just trying to figure out how we're going to be solid even when the shift comes to us. And I think having a good sphere of influence type organization where we make sure that we're touching people that might be recommending us already, and we're just not saying thank you, or we're not keeping in touch and things like that. It's just such low-hanging fruit for, I think, a lot of real estate agents. The statistics out there about people that sell a house and don't talk to those past clients is staggering. So as a leader, and just like we were talking about before, as painful as it can be, we want to force everybody in that direction because we know it works. And we're now talking every week. Oh, I talked with this person. They gave us a lead on a listing. Or this guy was just thinking about selling. Just talking to people and having the time to talk to people. So when you don't have an assistant and you don't have the systems in place, you're just handling home inspections. You're handling the fires that happen during the transaction, and you're not doing the sphere of influence stuff. So sphere is big for us. I'm now contemplating rebuilding my adamdow.com website. Like in 2006, that was my huge money generator. There was not a lot of competition there. So now it's always figuring out, and I think the traditional agent is coming back, doing the open houses, doing maybe even some print advertising in the newspaper. If no one's doing it, then you set yourself apart. If if there's a ton of people doing it, like now everybody's got a website. So is that really the place to invest a bunch of money? So it's always kind of figuring out what's successful, but also where there's not a lot of competition for. If you just want to be known for doing open houses, you can set up 50 signs, pay somebody. I've heard this last week, somebody just pays people to put out 50 signs every time they have an open house. So you're really splashing the town when you do that. So just commit to one big, successful money-making activity and just hammer it.
Yeah, that's what we do. We door knock around open houses, but we put out about 40 signs for every open house.
Right.
It's like thoroughly obnoxious. It doesn't break any rules, but it's really obnoxious.
So do you pay somebody to do that?
Yeah, we've got a full-time, we had two, but we're down to one full-time runner. He's just a high school kid that's graduating early that wants to be in real estate. So he's getting his license.
But I think that goes back to what we're looking for. So if a realtor's thinking, well, I don't want to do the open houses. I don't want to put the signs out. I don't want to, that means you're thinking short term. You're not thinking that if you had a runner, if you had somebody, and to that point, was talking to somebody else. And when you're thinking about an assistant, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have them do real estate activities. Like you shouldn't be doing a Costco run, or you shouldn't be doing there's a lot of things that you can pay people to do. So you can go out and make the $200 an hour and, always spend time with the kids, always do the family stuff. Don't outsource that. But there's a lot of other things that you can outsource that may not come under real estate assistant job profile.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because when you make that commitment, to outsource personal or professional lower level tasks, it's a real blessing to the person you're hiring. So there's no and then it also forces you to be really honest with yourself about doubling down on the things that do make you money.
Right.
Because you're taking a risk, right? When you bring somebody into the world, you're taking on that responsibility and risk, and you better make sure you do, double the amount of work with the time you have.
But my best, because I'm pretty good at this concept. My wife isn't as much. She still thinks I need to do some of the stuff, the mowing the lawn and things. But one of the funny parts is my brother-in-law is a builder, and he was putting a roof on our house. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll give up duty at the real estate office and help schlep up the shingles to the roof. And I remember to this day, this was 15 years ago, but the guy that took my duty got a call that was a waterfront property. He sold that waterfront, and that guy bought another property. So it turned into be a $40,000 roof that cost me 10.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've got my wife convinced now. We have a 30 hours a week house assistant, and we don't do anything around the house. It's pretty good. Let me ask you, and this is true for sure for me. I've gotten better at it in the last few years, but most business owners I talk to, they really struggle to because there's always so much to do, and there's increased stress when you take the lead in something like this. They struggle with enjoying the ride, really enjoying the ride. What practices have you put in place to make sure that you're appreciating the journey? You're not missing time with your kids. You're present. How have you dealt with that struggle?
It's fun to be number one in the state, and there's some people chasing me, which makes it fun, the competition of that. But one thing that I really focus on is not having that outweigh the family time. Doing the skiing on the weekends, spending time with the family. It's one of those things where I saw a thing at one of our conventions talking about all the balls that we have in our lives, and all of them are glass balls except for business. That's the rubber ball, because if you drop business, most likely you can catch it and recover. If you drop family, you drop life, relationship, things like that, those are the things that can shatter. So really trying to focus on yes, having a successful business, but not at the expense of these other glass balls that can shatter.
Yeah, that's a really and that's a great analogy. I'd never heard that before. Is there what specific rules or standards do you have that have helped you achieve that balance? Is there family night Friday, no matter what, this night is my late night, and the wife agrees to it? Anything practical that we can learn?
Actually, I think that the property expert, like, because when you build a team, there's this there's this feeling of being handed off. Like, so somebody calls me to list their house, and then I give them to somebody else on my team, and they feel like, oh, you can't deal with me. You're going to give me to so-and-so. So that's why we created a role that made sense from a business model standpoint. And it's hard to, now it's easy to do the transition, but before it was hard. I'd have the want, yeah, I didn't want to disappoint people. So, oh no, I'll handle you guys. Yeah, I'll go out with you on the buyer consultation, or I'll go out on the listing presentation. But committing to the actual business model in what we're setting up, and not letting that concept, or feeling like I was letting people down in the beginning, not letting that derail us, because I knew that I had to set up the team to have the family time. So it was a commitment to making the systems work when they were new. Now it's just part of how we do it. And now we have people copying us that are saying, well, maybe that team thing is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And because if you have coverage for open houses, you have coverage for showings, you have support from each other. And I've got 2 listing agents now, and the best thing that they're doing this winter is really committing to covering each other and giving each other leverage, and saying, all right, you take that weekend, I'm going to take this weekend, and really giving each other freedom to do that. But it was hard to transition from it's just a handoff to creating a business that truly operates better in this model.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
now it's not even, I do go skiing on the weekends a lot, and I'm not feeling like I should be back doing showings and things like that, because we committed to the model, and that's how we do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And a lot of times I think we do it to ourselves. I've got a client in our boardroom where she works 4 days a week. She does about 30 million personally, and she doesn't work Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. And the response is that I have an appointment at that time. It's like, can you do it Sunday? No, I have an appointment at that time. Can you do it Friday afternoon? I have an appointment at that time.
Right.
Can you do it Tuesday night? No, I have an appointment at that time. So it's just like,
well, and
it doesn't hurt her business. It helps her business.
And I tell that to new agents. I say, if somebody asks you to do an appointment at 2 tomorrow and it doesn't work for you, ask if there's an easier time for them or another time they can do it. Because most of the time they're just picking a number. So don't jump through hoops just because they asked you to do that time. Have a discussion to say, well, could you do the next day at 2? Because that's a better time for me. So even just asking the question, if you've got conflicts, people, I think, as we're new in the business, we just want to jump and do things or get answers quickly and things like that. But sometimes we're doing some negotiation training with the team, reading the Chris Voss book, Never Split the Difference, and they talk about spreading out the negotiation, and that actually helps the process versus having it hurried. So I think agents can build time into their schedules, and it's actually good for business too.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so this is one of my favorite parts of the show. I'm just gonna, I call it the lightning round. I'm just gonna kind of fire questions at you and just like short 1, 2, 3 word answers. All right.
Sure.
All right. So, what keeps you up at night when it comes to the business?
Leadership.
What were you most afraid of when building a real estate team?
Failing the team.
Okay. What's the best advice you've ever received about business?
Set up systems.
Awesome. Can you share like a personal daily or weekly habit that you think contributes to your success?
I meet with people that are more successful than I am. That's just, you learn a lot from people that have gone through the business before you, and that's more than 3 words, but meet with people that have done it before you.
Awesome. Yeah. Standing on the shoulders of giants. How about an app or like internet resource like Evernote or something like that you're in love with that you think is worth sharing?
I mean, we just use Google Sheets at a high level. Checklists. We have our goals on Google Sheets. We've got our, when we're working on a project, Google Sheets. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It's just everybody's got all the information in front of them, and goals in front of them. When we do conference calls, we have the minutes of the meetings just all lined up on a Google Sheet.
Yeah, we have 10 tech tools that we teach, and one of them is Google.
Yeah.
Like it's not very sexy, but it works.
Works.
Just get it all in the business. How about a book that you'd recommend for maybe someone that is where you were 6 years ago and they want to make this sort of this shift into business building? What book would you recommend?
Um, I don't know if well, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, or The One Thing, or, Keller Williams Kool-Aid stuff, and that they are great books. But for me, I'm reading the book, The Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, the negotiation book. And what I like about that book, it helps you in life. It helps you when you're showing a property, you're negotiating. When you're negotiating a deal, you're negotiating. When home inspections happen, you're negotiating. And I don't think real estate agents really grasp that concept, that everything that they do, say, how they present themselves, all the different, the brochures that they give out, just the way that they're perceived, is all negotiations. It's all setting themselves up as professionals or not professional, the way they're online. So it's really thinking about, all right, people are hiring people. You can work for any company that you want, but they're hiring you. So how are you presenting yourself?
Yeah, awesome. How about if you had to do it all over again, anything you would have done differently?
I would have stopped being so creative earlier, like putting in the systems and saying, all right, this is a really cool way of doing something on Facebook. Let's put a standard around it, and then let's be creative about something else. So for me, it would just be, all right, how do we get the checklist in place sooner? There's a lot of things that happened that we're very fortunate, feel very blessed. Like a huge luxury business we've sold in a place where our average price point is 300,000. We've sold almost $100 million properties. So there's a whole nother aspect of that that's kind of cool. But I would have focused on the residential stuff a little sooner with processes to fill in those cash flow gaps. The big luxury stuff is fun and can be sexy, but it's a lot of hard work and sometimes no money, because 25% of the time it doesn't sell here. So
Yeah. Adam, as we're wrapping up, a lot of people in our industry are struggling. There's too many of us in most markets. Any words of encouragement that you'd give to someone who's struggling in the business?
I would say don't try to be something you're not. Like I was saying before, like if you're not a tech person, you can be something else. There's a lot of different ways to be successful in real estate. So if you see this young person that's killing it because they're hitting the phones and that's really not something that you can do, don't try and do it. There's tons of Google 10 ways to be successful in real estate. I'm sure there's a list out there somewhere. And then focus on it, commit to it, and figure out what your niche is in real estate. You don't have to be all things, but there's a lot of different ways that you can get up and running. And then as you get better at things, that's going to be your thing when you're at a listing presentation. You say, well, I just do high-end open houses, and that's what I do, and this is the success rate that I've had because they've committed to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like you ever see that video, Overnight Success by Gary Vaynerchuk?
Is that the one, the hockey stick?
Yeah.
Where they talk about the long
Yeah, it's like
road.
where they show every one of the 1,000 videos throughout the.
Oh, no, I haven't seen that. I should.
It's really good. Just Google Overnight Success Gary Vaynerchuk, and it's good advice. I don't like his language, or
No,
I
he's
think he
tough.
probably works a little too much, but it's really good advice. Like, we just want instant success. Like, I did an open house and it didn't work.
Right.
It's like, no, you need to be the open house guy.
Right.
The next 7 years, you're going to do, 52, if not 104 open houses every year for the next 7 years. And then when you're selling 112 homes a year from open houses and your team is now doing it for you,
Right.
then it made sense. And you can do that overnight success video on yourself.
Right.
That's really, really good advice. I love it. Now, this has been awesome, man. I don't think a lot of people share the nitty gritty of what it takes to build a business. So I think this was an awesome interview. I thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy, and Real Estate B School thanks you, and our listeners are going to get a lot out of this. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, let me